Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the April Cabinet meeting. We have a full agenda today, but before we begin, I'm going to ask our legal advisor, Kat, to just give us some guidance as to how the meeting is to be carried forward.
Thank you very much, Chair. This meeting takes place during the pre-election periods and as a result is subject to certain restrictions. Business transacting meetings may of course take place during the pre-election period, but during that period the local authority should be careful not to act in such a way that affects support for any particular political party. Therefore, any overt political comment, for example, should be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's begin today's agenda. Apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Davis, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a public question from a Mr. Dunning.
Just being admitted now, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me first of all?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, okay. Well, my question is, does Cabinet still endorse the Fine City Charter, and will they continue to encourage all employers to adopt the Charter as a priority?
Okay, thank you. I'm responding to your question, Mr. Dunning, and so this is my answer. So thank you for your question. It's worth setting out some background. A first meeting was held in early 2020 at the invitation of the City Council to discuss a proposal for developing a Fine City Employers Charter. The audience was a cross-section of public, private and voluntary sector bodies, including trades unions, business organisations like the Chamber of Commerce, Norwich Living Wage and a number of city councils. The meeting was chaired by a representative from ACAS. By the end of the meeting, it was agreed that a Fine City Employers Charter was worth exploring and that a second meeting should take place. A few weeks later, COVID-19 struck. As soon as possible, we will convene a second meeting, hopefully with an increased number of attendees, and continue the interrupted work of developing a Fine City Employers Charter for Norwich. So that's my answer, but you have one supplementary question if you wish to use it.
Okay, yes, thanks for the answer. Pending the second meeting, will Cabinet endorse the pursuit of those principles within the Charter within their own company, NCSL, so they can implement the principles within the Charter to the satisfaction of their own workforce?
Thank you for your supplementary question. Well, what I wouldn't want to do is to preempt the work of the stakeholders coming together to design a Fine City Charter. What I can say is that those principles have been applied within the context of what the Council has currently offered the employees of the new company. And I think the questioner will recognise that the day one offer to the company employees has been the biggest improvement in 10 years. It surprises me a little that some of those issues weren't addressed in that decade. And it is framed by, and that will be understood by an experienced trade unionist like yourself, by the need to take account of aspiration, and we've reflected that in a number of the Fine City Charter draft proposals, like a living wage, like investment in the workforce, like an enhancement in broad terms and conditions. But that obviously has to be framed by the realities of time, timescale, and working together collectively to make sure that we can achieve those objectives over a reasonable timescale, taking account of resources issues, particularly in the context of a pandemic, which has taken out £7 million from our budgets mid-year. But I'm confident that working collectively and positively, many of those objectives can be achieved in a reasonable timescale. Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Dunning.
Thank you.
Okay, so we now move on to another item which I've inserted, which refers to the sad news of the death of Ian Gibson, the former MP for Norwich North between 1997 and 2009. And I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of Cabinet and the Council about Ian. My colleague Mike Stonnard has already paid tribute on behalf of the Labour Party in Norwich. Ian was a remarkable man from a working class background who achieved significant things in his life. He was a politician with a hinterland, and he had a distinguished academic career as a scientist at the University of East Anglia, where he was a professor. And his work in researching cancer, it is somewhat tragic that this is the disease that he died of, gave hope to many thousands, tens of thousands of people, and the Big C appeal, of which he was a central part, continues to provide resources for the support of people with cancer and the investigation into finding health solutions. As a politician, he was both active in the trade union movement, but I think as a politician he had one of those rather almost unique qualities, or quality that very few politicians have, is that he transcended political boundaries. There were people of different political persuasions to Labour who found him someone they could connect with. And his independence of mind earned him the accolade not easily given when he was in 1 year during his parliamentary career designated Parliamentarian of the Year for the work he had done from the backbenches and his broader campaigning work in the committees of the House of Commons. I campaigned with him when the first wave of academy schools were being introduced, and that was a doughty fight. And I think our concern about the loss of democratic control over local schools and the ramifications of that has been borne out by the facts subsequently. So we remember him fondly, someone who was from Scotland, Dumfries, but passionate about Norwich and passionate about his football club. And many politicians fade from memory. I think Ian's contribution, his personality and his reputation will last much longer. So I would like us to remember Ian, and with a minute's silence. Thank you very much. So can we now move on to item 3, please, which is declarations of interest? Gail?
Thank you. Item 8, page 87, the revised Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework 2021. I've been appointed a member of the Broads Authority by Norwich City Council. I also sit on their planning committee. As I've participated in meetings that have been already considered and endorsed the NSPF, I'm declaring this as a personal interest, but this does not preclude me from participating in this item today. Then secondly, item 22, page 323, managing assets and non-housing, the exempt paper. As I've already mentioned, I am a member of the Broads Authority appointed by this council. In the case of this paper, I feel that I should declare a conflict of interest because of previous involvement and will withdraw from the meeting when this is discussed. This should be quite easy, Alan, because it's the last agenda item, so I can just disappear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. And Paul?
Item 7, just to say that I declare non-pecuniary interest as I'm director of Norwich MPS.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. So no more declarations of interest. Let's go on to the minutes. Are we happy to approve the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March 2021? All agreed? Can we indicate, please? Thank you very much. So agreed unanimously. So let's go on now to the first of our main items, the procurement and contract management strategy, and that's the name of Councillor Paul Kendrick. It's on page 13 of your papers.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report seeks approval of the draft procurement and contract management strategy. The strategy document to articulate how we approach procurement and contract management. To put this into context, we spend around £80 million each year on third-party services, works and goods, many of which contribute directly to services that we deliver to the local community. Effective contract management local authority. It ensures that we can source the goods and services required to deliver our services and manage our assets, but also help us meet our corporate priorities and contributes to the wider Norwich 2040 vision and represents a significant opportunity to influence the local economy. This is the draft of the strategy that will shape the next phase of our approach to procurement and contract management. Focuses on 5 areas: providing an efficient and effective service, reducing commercial risk, working locally, ethically and sustainably, driving value for money, making procurement mainstream. The procurement team in producing this draft has consulted with both senior colleagues and councillors, and I can very much commend their work. I worked very closely with them, and they've done an absolutely excellent job, I think, in producing this report. The scrutiny committee has considered the strategy coming to the cabinet today. It is acknowledged that the strategy addresses the importance of contract management and social value. It includes environmental factors such as climate change and carbon reduction. But specific recommendations from scrutiny are proposed to form foundations of its implementation. And at this stage, flexibility should remain within each commissioning specification to ensure that the most appropriate evaluation and weighting is used in each procurement. The strategy itself is only the beginning, and this report outlines the next steps. The first being develop a detailed implementation plan, recognising the importance of engaging with local businesses, voluntary and community and social enterprise sectors as part of this process. The implementation plan will ensure further business undertakings. It will collect feedback from suppliers. And just to once again emphasise how impressed I have been by this document and the officers who have worked on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Tracy, as the author and lead on this, and anything you'd like to add?
I think no, nothing further at this stage. Actually, I think Paul has summarised it, and it's obviously the strategy. We've had a lot of input, obviously, in feedback from council officers and members, and I say the implementation plan is the next stage. But as regards to the report itself, no, unless anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Any cabinet colleagues? No, very thorough report. Sandra, have you a question?
I do, yes. Just a quick one, because obviously this has already been discussed, and it's really good to see that the forward mentions that more can be done through procurement to generate social value for our communities. So several councils have ensured that social value and sustainability are built into the assessment criteria. So councils like Manchester, Stroud, Brighton and Hove, they all made sure that 1/5 of the criteria for awarding contracts is weighed on social value. And that means they don't have to consider just the cheapest contract, but can give more weight to the contracts that bring added benefits for communities and environment. The Scrutiny Committee recommended that Norwich Cabinet consider doing the same. Does the Cabinet agree with this? And can you confirm what weighting will be given to social value in the assessment criteria going forward?
Thank you, Sandra. Paul, I know, attended that Scrutiny Committee meeting. Paul, did you want to comment?
Yes, actually what the Scrutiny Committee said is it recommended that we should consider the question of social good. And I can assure you that I and the officers have done so. But at the end of the day, we think it's the best way to continue to proceed upon using a 100% value, 60% in terms of price and 40% in terms of quality. At the end of the day, we owe that to both our tenants and our residents to ensure that they have the best quality contracts provided by reliable and efficient contractors. And at the end of the day, I think this is the way to go forward at this stage. Social value or social good is very much in the eye of the beholder, and it's very difficult to quantify in the way that you can do, obviously, price, but which you can also do with quality. So I think what this document does, I think it goes along the right passageway. At the end of the day, of course, there are, especially for the larger contracts, there are minimum standards we impose on contractors in terms of apprenticeships and other elements of social goods. So we should always bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. Any comment you wanted to make on that, Tracy, at all? And then I'll bring in James.
Thank you. Yes, I think we actually value that, social value should be part of the evaluation criteria. But what we didn't want to do is actually put a figure on it in the strategy. I think it is very variable. I've looked at some work that the Social Value Portal has done with the Local Government Association. And for example, in their toolkit, they're recommending sort of ranges of evaluation criteria for social value, but it depends on whether price is important, quality is important, or whether social value opportunities are really high. So I think why when not wishing of a figure of like 20% shall be the evaluation criteria. We just want that flexibility, but absolutely we agree that the social value should be part of a weighting of a contract award.
Thank you, Tracy. James, you wanted to come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Whilst I fully accept and understand the sort of reasons for talking about flexibility, I suppose what I'm interested in, this is a 3-year strategy. Is there a formal review point expected at any point within that 3-year period to look to tweak the strategy, or is this strategy once set now? Is that set in stone until 2024? Thank you.
Thanks, James. Annabelle?
I'd just like to give you some assurance that we intend to do an annual review because as a document describes, we've got a 3-phase process to this. So we felt it would be appropriate to do an annual review and refresh. So we will come back and look at what we've developed in that intervening period and make sure the strategy reflects that. So we'll come back with an annual review.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anybody? I suppose in terms of that social value element, and just looking at pages 16 and 17, paragraph 14 talks about that strategy being informed and integral to our corporate plan, and the number of strategies that are listed as part of that, including the social value framework, environmental policy framework, COVID recovery, and all of those clearly are designed in their DNA to have societal and therefore social value to the community of Norwich. I mean, can I also commend this? This is an excellent piece of work, very clearly written, very well designed and laid out, very user friendly, and it is, as the phrase has it, a living document. And Annabelle has has referenced the fact that it will be subject to annual review. So opportunities for new ideas and so on will continue to inform the shape of this document going forward. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? And can I ask if Cabinet are happy to approve the draft procurement and contract management strategy 21 to 24? If you could indicate, please, if you support it. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. So now we go on to the to item 6, which is the Norwich City Services business plan. Now, in this paper, there is the business plan, which is included. It should have been a below the line document since it's a business plan. So there may well be questions on that, but those will need to be asked below the line. But the report is about to be presented by Councillor Maguire, and obviously questions on this, the above the line report, of course, is what we'll be able to discuss now. What we'll need to do with the recommendations is, following the presentation of the report and discussion, is we'll have to hold those over for confirmation when we've looked at the business plan below the line. Okay, over to you, Councillor Maguire.
Well, Chair, I get all the good jobs closely associated with the process of bringing back the joint ventures from the beginning. And this is another red letter day on the calendar of that project. Officers and members of the Labour administration have worked long and hard so that we might arrive at this moment. I recall first discussions in 2016, followed by more focused meetings and planning in 2017. These early plans then took a real grip, and by 2018, with the public announcement of our intention to bring them back into ownership, those meetings went on steroids. They filled so much of my diary in 2019, and by 2020, the magnificent machinery that we created to bring back the JVs hummed along like the well-oiled machine it was and is. I recall the series of cross-party working group meetings that were held, and it was great to receive the support that we did in those meetings. Despite the pandemic, we successfully recruited an absolutely first-class MD, along with a very experienced chair of the board and 3 very able non-executive directors. All those years of hard work and planning to come to this point is why we have such an ambitious and yet prudent plan. I believe someone said we'd only started planning this a year ago. How naive were they? Following the successful conclusion of the service transfer to our new wholly owned company, the new managing director, Hannah Lays, has developed the company's first business plan, and that business plan has been approved by the company board and is included, as you've said, later in the agenda. The business plan forms a key element of the governance arrangements between the council and the company, and Cabinet is therefore asked to consider the Norwich City Services Limited business plan 2021 to 2024. That business plan clearly aligns with the strategic priorities of the council, with the safe transfer of services into the company being an essential outcome for all stakeholders. It's been a major transformation project for the council. There's been a dedicated team which has delivered in line with the original timescales way before the first lockdown in March 2020. The business plan continues the principles approved by Cabinet in July 2020 in relation to phase 2, which is building maintenance services, and members will be briefed on progress at key milestones through 2021-2022. The council project team will also continue throughout 2021-2022 to support the company with the 1st April 2022 transfer. The Cabinet has to approve the pension pooling fund arrangements for staff currently within the Norfolk Pension Fund as part of the TUPE process transfer arrangements for existing staff. I'd like to finish by saying once again, thank you to all the officers who have been involved in this from our first beginnings in 2017 to the point where the company has been operating 2 weeks and not a single hiccup has been apparent. this business plan is a real tribute to all of that hard work and many sleepless nights. I ask Cabinet to accept the recommendations, as you say, subject to any discussion later on.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and we all endorse, I'm sure, the warm words that you said about the work that's been done by officers to bring this to fruition and the smooth transfer on April the 1st. We welcome Anne Gibson, who is the chair of the company, and Hannah Lays, who is the managing director. I think they're probably becoming familiar faces now at our meetings. Did either of you want to say anything at this stage? Obviously, we have the below the line business report, and there may be things that you'd want to pick up at that stage. But any initial comments or observations? Who would like to start?
Oh, yeah, Alan, if I check in first. So no, I don't think there's anything to add. I think it's just exciting that we're actually at this point and we've got the business plan to kind of lead us on the way, especially for the first year, which is very much focused on. And it's just exciting to now actually be here over the line following the 1st of April and to be starting this exciting new journey and adventure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anne?
Just to add that the board have been meeting during this year. We've had great support from Hannah and from the team at the council, and we're very excited about the year ahead. We're excited to present this business plan to you, the first of many, and we're looking forward to the next year.
Thank you, Anne. Any cabinet colleagues? Gail?
Just like to endorse, some of Kevin's comments. I know how hard people have worked to get us to this stage, and it is exciting. And to have got over the hurdle of the first day really was absolutely tremendous. So thank you very much, and look forward to the exciting things to come.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but I'll save those for the below the line section of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So other comments? James, any comments from you? No? Okay. Sandra?
I do have a question, if I may. So the report in front of us states that NCSL will, in the first year, produce a roadmap to make further progress on improving terms and conditions for employees. I've seen other briefings where it's been highlighted that that roadmap already exists. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen. I'm not sure which of these is true. But could you please clarify what exactly is the destination of the either existing or future roadmap? So can you clarify what the terms and conditions will be at the end of the roadmap? So what's the target, and does or will this roadmap make it clear under which financial circumstances of the company which terms and conditions will be improved? So are there clear commitments to triggers in the roadmap as well, please?
I'm going to kick that question because that's not my sort of portfolio area, talking about terms and conditions, HR matters. So I'm going to turn to Alan and also to Hannah and Dan, whether they've got any comments.
Well, I'm going to pass on to Anne. Are you going to comment on this, or Hannah, or both?
I think it's Hannah has the detail, and I know it's she shared a document already with staff at the end of last week, so I'll let her talk about that.
Yeah, I can confirm that the roadmap sets out the high-level milestones. So this really is a work in kind of progress document. It was initiated because we have got a desire and will to improve terms and conditions of employment across the board. However, we've recognised that this is going to need to be undertaken incrementally, and we've said that this will be over a period of 1 to 5 years. and subject to affordability. So as part of the high level milestones, what it actually includes is joint discussions with the trade unions with regards to forward kind of planning, forward business plans, potential service improvements, transformation opportunities, and discussions on priorities for improvements in terms of terms and conditions. Obviously still being very, very new in terms of kind of third week into the company, there's an awful lot that we still need to establish and get to grips with. So it really is, as we've said, it's the starting point for a roadmap in terms of looking at those priorities for improvements in terms and conditions, and consulting with the different opportunities we have and what we see as kind of those key identification of short, medium and long-term goals. So there's still a lot of questions kind of unanswered at this point, but it's kind of that openness that we want to kind of start this journey.
Thank you.
Does that help to cover?
Yeah, that's very clear, and it will require everybody to work together to make a success of the company. And in specific reference to terms and conditions of employment, the day one terms and conditions of employment, which improvements which we have promised throughout this process have been delivered, and they do make some significant changes to the contracts which the workforce were working under their previous employer, Norse, including pay increase, sick pay, investment in terms and conditions in relation to equipment for staff, and a range of other things that I think give confidence going forward. But we must also remember that the success of the company at the moment is funded 100% by the City Council, with the exception of some contracts that were carried over. So those costs around those improved terms and conditions are directly from the City Council's budget. And clearly we have a range of responsibilities in a very difficult landscape, financial landscape, particularly the government not replenishing our budgets for the loss of money due to COVID, to tackle the budget challenges in the medium term, which Sandra and all members of council will be aware of when we discuss the budget in February. So it is about an incremental process, but in terms of terms and conditions, we have made a commitment, we have delivered a promise, and we have strengthened those rights at work in a significant way, as not a gesture, but as an indication of the direction of travel that we want to take and the success we want to make of the company. Okay. So if we can go to the recommendations, we have to make those conditional on the discussion of the below the line items. So if we could have a recommendation which is subject to the acceptance of the business plan, are we happy to agree? Would we be happy to agree the recommendations on page 37? Could we please indicate? Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on then to another business plan. This is the NPS, Norwich business plan. Again, there's a above and below the line part to this. Councillor Gail Harris will introduce the above the line report.
Thank you, Alan. So item 7. The recommendation is to approve the NPS business plan for 21-22. The business plan is an agenda item within the below the line papers, so there might well be discussion when we reach that item, and the recommendations will be based in sort of conjunction with that. So each new financial year, a business plan has to be approved by Cabinet, which will agree the priorities and services to be delivered by NPSN for the Council over the forthcoming year. The annual business plan has been developed in collaboration with council officers, and the 2021-22 plan represents the final trading year for the company. From April 2022, the services, which include estate services, including asset management and consultancy services, will be transferred back to the council's property and housing departments. There is much to be done in 21 to 22, as detailed on page 82. And I think that it's fair to say that we have a close working relationship with NPSN. The details of delivery for 21-22 will be contained within an operational plan at present being developed by council officers and colleagues from NPSN. It should be completed by the end of the month. Again, the financial implications are set out in the papers on page 79. This will most certainly be a challenging year, but I know that we can depend on our colleagues in NPSN to work closely with our officers to ensure the smooth planning and handover of services at the end of March 2022. I'd like to personally thank NPSN for their continued support, and the recommendation is to approve the NPS Norwich business plan for 21-22 in consideration with a confidential appendix later in the agenda.
Thank you very much, Gail. Any officer comments at all? No. No. Sandra, any comments?
I do have a question, please.
Yeah.
May. So I read through the business plan and the values around collaborative working with their clients, and I think I'd speak for other members probably as well, that I found that collaboration sometimes a little bit difficult. For example, currently got 8 outstanding inquiries with MPS that have not met the required deadline, and a lot of them refer to jobs that have not been done properly or property services that should have been carried out and weren't. And I think this tallies with some of the experiences that other councillors and potentially council officers have had as well. So I recall a scrutiny meeting where officers spoke of their surprise that when they visited Dolphin and Watson Grove, they realised that many of the property services that should have been delivered were not. Now, I'm fully aware that this will be the final year of the collaboration, but could you explain what checks the council has put in place to ensure that all contracted services are delivered fully and to highest standard, and that NPS increases its responsiveness to council inquiries and requests?
So, Gail, do you want Louise to pick this up?
I think Louise can answer that, and if need be, I will add to it as well.
Okay, that's fine. So, Lou.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could ask Democratic Services colleagues, we have a colleague from MPS waiting in the waiting room to be admitted. So if it would be okay to let Paul then in, that would be helpful. Thank you. So thank you, Councillor, for the question. I've been working closely with NPS over the last few months to put meetings and methods in place to kind of review and ensure that things are being dealt with promptly and in the way they should. We recognise that due to COVID, there has been a backlog in some areas. We are now beginning to resolve that, and we are closely monitoring that. So there's a regular kind of process in place for meeting with colleagues to kind of resolve that. I don't know if there's anything that Paul would like to add, if he heard that question.
Yes, I don't know if everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late getting into the being admitted in. Sorry, Councillor Waters. Could you just recap on the question for me, please?
It was about the processes we have in place for monitoring, dealing with repairs and complaints issues.
Yeah.
Reflection of the fact that there's been some delays.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Yes, through the COVID period, there were restrictions on how much we could undertake, and the contractors who we contract administer on behalf of the council. The catch-up that's been taking place since the matters were eased in terms of access to properties has dealt with large amounts of the backlog and volume that still need to be completed. But yes, there have been an unusually higher level of responses we've had to make to concerns from residents, but we are working through those, and indeed we have targeted and mobilised more resource into that area as well, and looking very much at the diagnosis of what is actually causing some of those concerns that are coming through to us. So a lot of work is being done both with council officers, frontline help desk staff, and indeed my teams of people who work to support the overall delivery of the repairs and maintenance. So I'd include in challenging the contractors to understand why some works, for example, are not being delivered on time or to the standard we require. So all of that is underway. We have a weekly liaison meeting with the contractors on the front line, along with colleagues from the City Council. So an awful lot is being done to move that forward. And I'd like to reassure Cabinet that it's taken absolutely my full attention and my senior team's attention with the contractors to respond as quickly as we can and get those remaining matters resolved for residents.
Thank you, Paul. Can I bring in Gail?
And on the back of that, we have put some more resource very recently, or we're getting some more resource to deal with some of the admin work, which sometimes it is a matter of communication that is the issue. And I am now having regular catch-up meetings every week with somebody from NPS, because I also have had concerns. So it's not being brushed under the table.
I think there are a number of councillors, including myself, who have concerns as well. So we're monitoring this very carefully. James, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I wasn't going to, but it's actually on the back of the point that's just been made. Yeah, it seems to me at the moment that coming out of where we've been in terms of various lockdowns, there's a significant amount of activity in property maintenance and restoration, etc., and lots of where there was capacity in the marketplace seems to be currently being used. I suppose, Paul, it's a question for you. Do you think that your contractors have enough capacity to deliver the programme of works that you are now wanting to go through to get back on track at this point?
Yes, thank you, James. Yes, we do monitor very, very closely all of the contractors, whether it's to do with gas, whether it's to do with other compliance matters or repairs and maintenance. We meet with them weekly or fortnightly or monthly, depending on the appropriateness of what that engagement process needs to be. Yes, you're absolutely right. As the house building industry really kicks on, there's a lot of competition to try and recruit staff and fill vacancies when they become vacant. So, but absolutely, temporary resources brought in wherever we can. We do look to subcontract work out where there might be difficulties with the core contractor at no additional cost to the council. That's absolutely clear. But yes, there have been some shortage issues in a number of areas, and indeed supplies. One of the other issues is supplies coming through with Brexit and some of the COVID disruption. There have been periods of time when plaster and other materials have been in scarce supply. So it's not unique. We are keeping a very close eye, very much checking and challenging. But I would be lying if I didn't say that there have been some resourcing challenges, and it is about us keeping on top of the contractors and making sure they're doing their damnedest to do as much as they possibly can and fill those vacancies one way or another.
Thanks very much for the answer.
Thank you, Paul. Any other Cabinet colleagues, officers want to make any remarks? Okay, well, thank you very much for the assurances, Paul. Additional resources are now being deployed, and it will be. We are all as councillors getting more casework, consequent upon COVID, but fewer on outstanding repairs and maintenance and so on would be extremely welcome. Okay, thank you very much. Right, let's move on then to, I think we're dealing with lots of weighty matters this evening, but in terms of physical size, the revised Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework 2021 is probably the weightiest of the lot. And I pass over to Councillor Mike Stannard to present the report.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to endorse the revised Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework and also to consider comments made by the Council Sustainable Development Panel. And the context, of course, is, as we all well know, at present and for the present, councils have a legal duty to cooperate on strategically important and cross-boundary issues. And this has been the case for the development and production of the NSPF, as I shall now refer to it because it's easier. Cabinet last approved the NSPF in 2019, but as noted at the time, and as you know, there is a requirement to keep it up to date. And this revised version, which is a joint document, is therefore by definition a compromise document. It's incorporated a number of revisions which are largely technical details. And it was reported to, as I say, the Council Sustainable Development Panel on the 18th of March this year. Now, the Sustainable Development Panel isn't able to approve or otherwise documents. What it can do is make recommendations to Cabinet to consider alongside such documents. Now, some panel members at that meeting felt the document didn't go far enough in terms of things like energy efficiency, the circular economy, climate change, and also did not have sufficient clarity on how to deliver sustainable transport and healthy lifestyle objectives. As chair of the panel, I had to remind members that, as I said a moment ago, this is a joint document and that therefore compromises have to be made by all parties to ensure that all parties are happy with the content. That's how it works. However, SD panel, taking that into account, agreed to recommend Cabinet to endorse the document subject to the issues I just mentioned being considered further in the next iteration. So the recommendation is to endorse the document, but to take into account those issues for future iterations. The covering report is very good. And paragraph 9 sets out the main changes, including a new section on climate change, and the City Council has always worked very hard to ensure that climate change is taken into account in these cross-organisation documents. Chapter 10 of the covering report sets out new agreements or amendments to existing agreements as a result of the new revisions of the document, and Chapter 11 summarises the amended next steps. So as I say, the recommendation is for Cabinet to endorse the revised NSPF for 2021, but to take into account the issues raised by Sustainable Development Panel, which we would like to be taken into consideration when working on future iterations. And I apologise for the noise in the background. It's the usual interruptions from my dog. He's trying to scratch the wooden floor up.
He has a cameo appearance, doesn't he, at most of our meetings? So say hello to Jury from all of us.
Oh, well, he's very interested in item, I think it's item 12.
Well, I'll use Chair's discretion and take comments if there's a request. So moving on from that slightly surreal last comment, Judith, you're the planning policy team leader for this substantial and very good report. Any comments you would like to make?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we'll feed these comments, the comments of Sustainable Development Panel, back to the group so that they will be taken into account in the next iteration of the document. But I've nothing further to add to that at this stage. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other officer comments? Any Cabinet comments? James, have you a question?
No, thank you.
Sandra, have you a question?
Unsurprisingly, I do. You won't be surprised that I pick up on comments that Mike has made. I'm going to frame it a little bit in a legal context, so suitably weighty as well. So it's in the document, it says that significant work, including 18 supporting papers, have been produced by the project team to support the Section 8 and the Agreement 19 on climate change in the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework. This includes the research paper on climate change in the planning system and detailed submissions from several experts on the draft Greater Norwich local plan and its recent Regulation 19 consultations have demonstrated that its policies for low carbon construction, low energy homes, renewable energy, and the quantum and spatial distribution of the housing proposed all undermine its soundness in addressing climate change mitigation. The plan currently does not demonstrate compliance with the legal duty for local plans to be designed to secure climate change mitigation under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. In physical and scientific terms, the identified policy gaps in the GNLP amount to millions of tons of CO2 emissions from now to 2038, which could otherwise be prevented. On the one hand, this is a very regrettable situation. On the other hand, the serious research as part of the NSPF, if applied now, could go a long way to starting to correct the climate change issue in the GNLP and ensuring plan soundness and legal compliance. So will the Cabinet go back to the Greater Norwich Development Partnership and request that the draft GNLP is reviewed for climate change against the findings so far of the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework to ensure legal compliance and prevent possible legal delays to the plan being adopted later? Because we're running the risk that if we don't, as currently it stands, I don't believe it shows legal compliance, that we run into delays by this being challenged legally going forward.
There's some points on the Greater Norwich local plan. Graham, do you want to come in and comment on those points related to that?
Yes, if I can just respond by picking up that issue. I mean, clearly the consultation on the Greater Norwich local plan closed at Regulation 19 stage a couple of weeks ago, effectively, and we're now going through the process as part of that joint exercise with Broadland and South Norfolk to consider those representations that have been made on that local plan and basically report back through both GNDP and councils for consideration of whether the Regulation 19 draft we published for consultation is sound and should be submitted to government. Those comments that Councillor Bogoline's just raised now are far more relevant to be picked up when the GNLP comes back to Cabinet and Council for consideration. The report in front of us now is detailing the NSPF, which is the non-statutory agreement between all the local authorities in Norfolk, which obviously has as you would reasonably expect, strengthened policies around, or strengthened agreements around climate change. And clearly, when we report back on the GNLP, we will consider the consistency of the emerging GNLP with the overarching agreements that we're entering into now.
Thank you, Graham. Judith, anything to add to that at all?
No, nothing to add to that, thanks.
Okay. Mike, any points you would like to make?
I think Graham always handles the technical and legal aspects far more eloquently and far better and probably more accurately than I could ever aspire to. So thank you, Graham, for that. And I think that explains the process going forward and why it would be not appropriate at the moment to go back to our partners. We need to take up these issues as part of the process going forward, which is what SD panel proposed. And I note that members of Sandra's party at the SD panel endorsed that. I think Sandra, fair points. We need to look ahead and deal with them going forward in the process.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity with the Reg 19 consultation responses to be able to do that. So this will come back for further discussion at Cabinet in due course. Okay, so I'd like to thank the work of particularly Judith and Charlotte on their contribution to this very comprehensive report. and ask colleagues if you're happy to endorse the revised Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework, if you could indicate, please. Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's now move on to item 9, a shorter report, but a significant one. Development of 3 Score Phase 3. Gail, are you leading on that with Paul making additional comments? I think that's probably it.
Yeah, that way around. Yeah. I just
okay.
need to, we've got the relevant officers in. We've got Andrew, we've got Sean, Louise. I know Dave Shaw can't be with us. He's at another meeting. So I think we've got who we need. Right, we've got a paper in front of us because time really is of the essence here. This report is about continuing with the development of phase 3 of the development of 3 School at Bowthorpe. Design services commissioned through NPS and subcontracted to Hampson, Barron and Smith have progressed well and have moved to REBA stage 2. The emergent design is showing that 83 dwellings could be delivered on the site. This is a slight reduction from the 90 new homes previously reported to Cabinet, and revised financial modelling for the HRA development can be found in the exempt appendix to this report. It is thought that design will progress to REBA stage 3 and the submission of a planning application in June. It has become obvious that utilising the work of RG Carter from Rain Park, because they are mobilised on the adjacent site, will offer potential for significant efficiencies and opportunities for the quick delivery of the new housing in phase 3. The efficiencies that this will enable are all well detailed in paragraph 8 on page 209. We are in fact building on previous success. RG Carter understands the site and will enable the council to achieve an accelerated programme of building these much needed new homes. RG Carter on the Pagabo Medium Works framework, and that means that as a local authority, we can make a direct award of a contract to RG Carter for contracts up to £10 million. In order to maximise the efficiencies, as previously mentioned, it is proposed to use the Pagabo frameworks to direct award a contract to RG Carter for both the pre-construction service agreement and the construction of 3 School phase 3. Again, financial details are in the exempt appendix. To maximise efficiencies and so as not to delay works, the proposal to direct award a pre-construction service agreement for REBA stage 4 for 3 School phase 3 to RG Carter needs to be formally signed within the next month. That is why we have a report in front of us requesting delegated powers to do just that. Then, in order to allow the development to proceed at pace, it is further proposed to request delegated powers to direct award the full construction contract for the social housing development of 3 School phase 3 to RG Carter. The delegation will allow for a quick, seamless transition from pre-construction into the construction phase, although this is dependent on good progress being made on the REBA stage 4 detailed design works and costs being within the budget limits set out in the exempt report. It is also recognised that the development of Rain Park by Norwich Regeneration Limited is pleasingly showing a strong sales demand for the house types that are being built. From work undertaken on a detailed business case by NRL, there is a case for some of the dwellings in the 3 School phase 3 to be being built for private sale. This would mean the revised scheme of 83 dwellings would be split, with 58 being for social rent for the council and 25 being for private sale through NRL. It is expected that the area of land to be appropriated to the HRA will come to Cabinet in June, alongside the business case for NRL to develop the remainder of the 3 School phase 3 site. The impact assessment has many positives. The building of good quality social housing to enhance environmental standards and reducing energy costs for our residents. The use of a local contractor and the possibilities of local apprenticeships and training, the biodiversity opportunities and the use of our retained right to buy receipts. You can't believe how excited I am to be presenting this report. This is the time when theory starts to become reality, the start of our pipeline of developing more much needed social housing. So we've got the recommendations in front of us. We've also got the exempt report to look at as well. So I'll leave it at that and ask officers to add anything that they would like to add.
Thank you very much, Gail, for that uplifting report. Andrew, did you want to come in?
I think Gail has covered the main points. I think I would just point out part of the reason why we're seeking the delegation for the main contract as well as the pre-construction services is to give that confidence to Carters that that is the intention. So that the framework is in effect, we're awarding one contract and splitting it into a pre-construction and a construction. But it's about giving them the confidence that that is the intention. We will, of course, report results through to Cabinet in June as we report the NRL opportunity to take on the 25 private dwellings.
Okay, thank you. Sean, welcome. I wondered if there was anything you wanted to add at this point.
No, nothing to add to what Andrew and Councillor Harris have said.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Okay.
Okay, Cabinet members, any questions? I mean, we all share it's unalloyed good news. James, any questions? Sandra?
I've been busy enough lately. Hey, I've got a question again. Well, obviously, you know, there's lots that make sense in that report and lots of good news, but the report highlights that the houses on 3 Score Phase 3 will be developed to a higher environmental standard than building regulations. And building regulation standard is obviously quite a low bar. I don't know if you've got more information yet on the planned environmental standard of Phase 3 and how this will compare to the energy efficiency of houses in Phase 1 and 2.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. Andrew, did you want to pick this one up?
Obviously, Phase 1 was the housing with care scheme and wasn't our development. Phase 2, the Rain Park development, significant number of those were to the passive house standard, around about 2/3 were to passive house. I think what we have committed to is taking on board those passive house principles. The design and specification is emerging around what that will specifically mean about the enhanced environmental standard. But certainly there will be a focus on the fabric of the building. There will be a focus on enhanced insulation, higher triple glazed windows, looking at mechanical vent heat recovery systems, and then also then looking at what we can do around renewable energy and whether there's opportunities for ground source heat pumps, solar PVs. So that's emerging, but not yet there at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. So can we now go to the recommendations? And again, because there's a below the line element to this report, any recommendation we make above the line is conditional on us on satisfaction with the below the line report. So conditionally, are we happy to accept the recommendations on page 207, if you could indicate, please. Thank you very much. That's agreed provisionally. So can we now please go on to a supplementary agenda, which is item 10, which is the public space protection orders paper in the name of Councillor Maguire.
Thanks, Chair. This is simply a renewal of existing conditions, of existing public space protection orders, one for the consumption of alcohol and the other for dog fouling. It went out for consultation. We had 83 respondents coming back altogether, of which 77 were supporting the making of the PSPOs. There were 3 which queried the alcohol PSPO for the city centre on the grounds that people should be allowed to drink if it's done so, you know, well behaved and so on. And of course, implicit, well, not only implicit, elsewhere we have our enforcement concordat anyway. It's about giving powers to the police who can then exercise discretion, and they're not going to stop everybody having a quiet, social, civilised drink, but it does give them the power to deal with more unruly drinking, and so that's fine. And with regard to the dog fouling, the only not exactly a question, but doubt raised was from the Kennel Club about how we define assistance dogs. But again, I think the way it's set out and the way we respond, that their concerns are covered. And B, once again, within that enforcement concordat, we wouldn't start by going in heavy-handed anyway. So it's about sensible exercising of two orders, and those orders have to be in place in order for them to be sensibly exercised.
I think we've lost Kevin momentarily.
Yes. But I was just finishing what I wanted to say anyway. So fairly straightforward, just asking for them to be renewed as they are, so nothing controversial. Or as Mike Stannard would say, nothing to see here. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Lou, Michael, who wants to respond on the office?
Nothing to add from me. Michael may want to add something though.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Waters. If I could just say, these are renewal of PSPOs that have been in place before. We've been using the legislation for probably 10 years now in one form or another. It's been extremely useful legislation to both the police and to the council officers, and obviously, we'd like to see them renewed again. Thank you.
Okay, officer comments, member comments, sorry, cabinet members. Sandra?
I do have a question. Yeah, going back to a cabinet meeting in September, I believe it was, where two members of the public asked a question on behalf of residents of Rosary Road, asking for the area to be included when the city's PSPOs were renewed. So my question is, why has this area not been included? The cabinet member in September said that the council would be guided by evidence. So can I ask what evidence has been collected with regards to potentially extending the PSPO boundary to creating new PSPOs to cover the area of concern around Rosary Road?
I'm happy to respond, Councillor Waters.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Michael.
Two sources of evidence.
Sorry, Kevin. If I've got Michael first, and then can I bring you in after that?
Kevin may wish to make his point first, Councillor Waters, please.
Okay. Sorry, Kevin. Fire away.
Well, where was I? Yeah. So two principal sources of evidence: our own evidence, which would be from things like fly tipping from discarded cans, for example, bottles, and so on, and others. And Mike will expand on this. And we also consult the police and get their data, and we exercise accordingly. So those are our sources of data, and we do respond to them where that need is demonstrable. So if Mike has anything to add, he's very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. The only point I was going to make was we have had some further information coming in. We've not really had a chance to analyse it yet and see how useful it might be, and it will be an area that we are going to look at again in the future.
Okay, so the point being made then is that while we are voting on whether we reaffirm the existing boundaries which have been in place for a decade, there is flexible measures to deal with, as you would expect, areas outside of that boundary, as it were, will be responsive to any particular needs that arise or hotspots. Am I correct in what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. Good. Any, James, did you have any points you want to make? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My point relates to dog fouling. Following the sort of temporary hiatus of the PSPO since they expired back in October, it's good to see that this is looking to be renewed today. One of the things I picked up from talking to people is the perception that there's been an increase in dog fouling, perhaps since lockdown started. I've read elsewhere about an increase in number of dogs. So on that basis, it's good to see this being renewed. I guess what would be helpful for me is to understand exactly what enforcement looks like for dog fouling. Clearly, we can't have a council officer everywhere at all times to see the offending dogs, and not all dog owners are as responsible as I know Councillor Stannard is with his dog. So I just wondered what that looks like in practice, please.
I'll just say briefly, and I'll get Mike to expand on it. We have got this long-standing Concordat, enforcement Concordat, which is a three-phase approach when offenders are found. And the first one, and the most common and the most successful, and the most usually used, is that of simple information, letting them know that there's a problem, and really they've been behaving irresponsibly with their dog, not picking up the mess. And then we can go on a bit further, and we do have that power to do actually a punitive step, but very, very rarely is that necessary, because most people take the hints, most people are responsible owners, but there are those powers in the wings. It is the iron fist underneath a very velvet glove.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. Michael.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Basically, Councillor Wright, majority of the complaints come in through our website. They'll be picked up. An officer will visit the area on a regular basis for the first few days. If, as Councillor Maguire says, this is a persistent person who allows their dog to foul, it's relatively easy to find and deal with. We will follow the Concordat initially, in that the person would be advised first what they need to do. And as Kevin has said, if we need to, we do have the powers to deal with it and issue a fixed penalty notice.
Okay, thank you for that. Mike?
Just to pick up something James said about the offending dog, Joey has asked me to make the point it's actually the offending owner and responsible owner rather than the dog.
Valid point.
Yes, Joey is concise and focused as ever.
He's listening intently to this.
Yeah, pass on our thanks, and thank you for being his mouthpiece. Okay, right. Time to go to the recommendations, which are on page 3 of the supplementary agenda. 2 recommendations before us. Are we happy to agree those? Please indicate. Thank you very much. So let's move back to the main agenda again, and item 11, which is internal audit service provision, page 217.
Thank you very much, Chair. The report outlines 2 options for consideration: the future delivery of the Council's internal audit functions. They are to retain the existing in-house structure, or to delegate to South Norfolk the provision of the internal audit services through the Eastern Internal Audit Service Consortium. On the basis of options appraisals, Cabinet is asked to endorse the decision of the Executive Director of Corporate and Commercial Services to delegate the provision of services to South Norfolk Council. The primary opportunity presented by this option is to increase resilience and access to a wider range of specialist skills. It is accepted that some risk management functions currently carried out by internal audit team will not be within the scope of the agreement. These are intended to be covered outside of the agreement, although still within the existing budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anything from you, Annabelle, on this?
No, I just wanted to share that I felt it was important that Cabinet were aware of the decision that I wanted to take. Fundamentally, we've talked about how we're going to become enabling services, and very much our audit team are working on a basis of compliance, and we really want to be transitioning that through to a risk base and fundamentally be embedding that service and support throughout the council. So I just looked at the risks associated with having such a small team and just felt this was the best outcome from the two options that you can see we considered. Yeah, so I've nothing further to add. Thank you.
No, thank you for that sort of overarching point alongside Paul's comments. Any Cabinet colleagues? This does definitely provide us with additional capacity and specialist access to specialist expertise, which I think is particularly valuable for the audit function. Cabinet members, James, you sit on audit, don't you?
I do, yes, but I don't have a question on this at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, and Sandra, do you have a question? Okay, right, good. Well, no, not good, but good. We've completed the report. So can we go to the recommendation? Seems to be very clear, practical way forward. Page 217. Happen to support the recommendations? Please indicate. Great. Okay. Let's now move on to item 12. This one drops in on us occasionally. So this relates to a write-off of national non-domestic rates. Paul, over to you.
Yes, this authority does its best to collect business rates, obviously because this is important for the funding of local government. There does come a point where, unfortunately, one cannot collect such dues due to a variety of circumstances, such as liquidation. So this is unfortunately one such circumstance. Obviously, as I always point out, even if you write off a debt, doesn't mean that you can't in the future actually collect that if it was to be possible to do so. I noticed a little bit earlier in the meeting, Councillor Stoddard said that Joey had an interest in item 12. Perhaps he knows something about the circumstances. If he does, it will be in the doghouse. Thank you.
It was item 10. It was my mistake, but I'm in the doghouse getting the wrong item.
No, I would imagine, Joey is interested in a versatile range of subjects, so it wouldn't have surprised me. Thank you, Paul. Anything to add, Annabelle? No, we do. We never forget. We never forget, and I think there have been times in the past where we have clawed back things that we have, written off or given up hope for. So, can we accept that action, please? Please indicate. Thank you very much. So let's move on to item 13, which is in the name of Gail. Gail, over to you.
Hi, I'm just waiting for, I think Neil's there now. Yep. Thank you. So this report shows This report shows significant investment in one of the sheltered housing schemes at Alnwick Court in Bowthorpe, work with an estimated value of up to £450,000. The scheme was constructed in 1986 and it is now the time for a complete heating upgrade due to the age of the equipment and parts now being discontinued. The work proposed is extensive. It will involve the replacement of the existing buried network of pipework, plus internal pipework, radiators and hot water storage units within the bungalows. It's also proposed to replace the existing gas boilers with a more efficient and carbon reducing system. Air source heat pumps, condensing gas boilers and solar thermal panels will provide heating for the scheme. Mechanical ventilation and heat recovery system, which will serve to remove waste heat from the boiler room, will supplement the heating of the community room. The exact specifications for this scheme are currently being prepared, but it is pleasing that the district heating will be 80 to 90% powered by renewable air source heating system. There will be a gas boiler backup to make sure that even in the coldest months, the system will be able to cope. This is especially important as this is a sheltered housing complex. It's an exciting scheme with so many improvements and efficiencies, but we are not at this stage to award the contract, as the tender opportunity will only be advertised this month. However, because the works are likely to take between 6 to 8 months to complete, we need to take advantage of the warmer months to undertake some of the work. For your reassurance, there will be a backup system in place for heating the accommodation whilst the work is undertaken. So at this stage, we're asking for delegated authority to award the contracts. So the recommendation is as on page 231. I think Neil is there. He might want to add something, or Louise might want to add something to this.
Yes, Neil, anything to add?
Not really, but just to say that it's a hybrid scheme, and it just shows the difficulty in retrofitting with renewables, but it is achievable, and this is something that we are going to be looking at a lot more detail in the months to come on other schemes.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Neil. Lou, anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. Cabinet colleagues, any comments, observations? No. Sandra, anything to add?
I do have a question, yes. So
Yeah.
This is obviously a good news story, so it's very impressive. However, a recent report on the state of district heating systems in the UK states that one of the largest efficiency losses from district heating is from secondary factors associated with end users. So this is a difficult issue to address because it is caused by low quality buildings, high network supply temperatures, and poor end user management. The current building stock is built to comply with current legislations, which does not plan for a sustainable future or any future district energy integration. So that quote from the report just demonstrates the need for whole house retrofitting rather than installing new heating systems without looking at the wider building quality and also including considerations of end user behavior. This is a general recommendation for retrofitting strategies, that a strategy looks at all the components of retrofitting to avoid efficiency losses and unintended consequences, including in end user behavior. So could you please explain whether such a whole house retrofitting approach was taken for this new district heating system and how this approach is managed for other improvements going forward, please?
Neil, did you want to comment? Oh, you're muted at the moment.
Right. The Committee for Climate Change came up with a figure of just over 27 grand for retrofitting properties. Now, it has to be holistic. You're quite right, Councillor Bogline. It has to be roofs, walls, windows, doors, cavities, not just the energy source. And this is something which we are looking at, strategizing about, and you are correct about the district heating too. That's one of the things. We've got round about 30 odd district heating systems within our assets. 2 or 3 of them we are working on. ANIC is one of them. This is in the forerunner pretty much of all the systems, but I would expect, yes, there would be a hybrid solution to most of these, and it would be across the board: geothermal, ground source, air source, solar, but each one is going to be very bespoke because of the locations, the types. They're so variable, and so each will be tailored to meet the specific location. But we are aware of the restrictions. We are aware that the building regs are minimum standards, and we are going to be aiming for something better than that.
Okay, thank you for that question and response. James, anything to add? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Neil, you just gave the figure of, I think you said 30 across your asset portfolio of district heating schemes. I guess I'm interested in getting a sense of what that looks like, or if you've got any idea of what that looks like across the city in terms of other asset holders, maybe the UEA accommodation, etc., and whether there are opportunities for other organisations in the city to perhaps learn from the way that the council is implementing this solution. Just really, what a sense. Trying to get a sense of scale of district heatings overall for the city.
It's a really good question, and we, in all the discussions we're having about how we are going to address this, we'd be silly not to include the UEA, one of the leading climate change universities in the world, in our thinking and in our planning. And so, our 30 district heating systems, again, they are varied across the board from age and efficiency. And the solution is going to be very different probably for each of these. I cannot be specific on the detail. There isn't going to be a broad brush approach to this at all. It's going to be very specific.
I mean, so my point was, presumably you would be willing and to work with any other and providing advice and best practice, I guess, when you've gone through this with other organisations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a real learning curve for this, and as I mentioned in the last cabinet meeting, the technology is really developing on a very rapid scale. Like ground source, air source, geothermal, solar. Hydrogen, they were talking about pumping hydrogen through the gas pipes instead of methane. It's now going to be a mixture of hydrogen and methane. Where are we with that in terms of the development of that and the technology that's available? We don't know yet. We've got to really do some research on that. In 10 years' time, it might all be hydrogen, but there's a question about the footprint of generating hydrogen. It's all developing very, very quickly, and it's going to demand that we really do a lot of research and share our results, and also work with other local authorities who are perhaps ahead of us in how they are dealing with this as a solution, because it's going to need a real nationwide approach to things like tower blocks, for instance. I mean, we've got 8 places like Birmingham have got hundreds, Newcastle dozens and dozens. How do they resolve their renewable issues with things like tower blocks? It is going to be a really thorough look-see to see how we best deal with the renewable and the retrofit thing especially.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Interesting discussion. Some valuable insights. So thank you all for that. Can we go to the recommendation? So one with a delegated approval, as Gail made clear. Are we able to endorse that report? Thank you very much. Let's now move on to item 14, which is the award of a contract for refurbishment of Carrow House. And Mike, that's yours.
Thank you, Leader. So the acquisition and refurbishment of Carrow House is a key part of the project to regenerate East Norwich, and the refurbishment is an important step in that process prior to the implementation of the regeneration master plan, which is currently in the process of being produced. Now, town deals money are being used to produce both the master plan and for the acquisition and refurbishment of this site. Now, it's important because if you look at the East Norwich site overall, there are 4 owners and two stalled sites. So just the context to all of this, which is really important, is that the council has brought together all the landowners and stakeholders to coordinate the regeneration of the site to ensure consistency and coherence, and that's quite an important achievement. The alternative, and I guess the worst case scenario, would have been for all 4 sites to be developed separately with little or no coherence. And what the East Norwich Partnership gives us the opportunity to do is to ensure that not just things like infrastructure and access are coordinated across the sites, but also through the master planning process, there's a single vision for all the sites shared by all site owners and stakeholders and the local community through the master planning process. So that's really, really important. The purchase and refurbishment of Carrow House from the County Council is a vital part of what is a complex jigsaw. The site itself is an important corner of the site. It's beside the outer ring road. and the County Council wished to dispose of it. Now, it's important that whoever owns the site is signed up to the East Norwich Vision and the partnership. And we took the view that probably the best way to ensure that was for the City Council to purchase the site, but also we were aware that there were uses to which it could be put, which would support the regeneration of the area and the local economy as well, by providing facilities which are greatly needed in the area. So the report, so the likely work that will be needed to do is likely to need to start before the next cabinet in June. So the report proposes to delegate authority to award the contract for the refurbishment of the Carrow House building to the Executive Director of Development and City Services in consultation with myself as portfolio holder or whoever it may be at the time, provided it's within the budget of £1.82 million, which has come from the town deals money, of course. And just to remind, again, some of the context, to remind colleagues that the refurbishment will create around 3,000 metres of lettable floor space for professional services and knowledge industries, as I say, much needed in the city, providing a valuable service. So that's basically what it is. It's to delegate authority for us to award that contract. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Anything to add, Andy?
No, Chair, I think the report stands on its own legs, as it were. So any questions, though, I'm happy to take. Okay, yeah, but a particularly important and strategic purchase as part of the vision for that East Norwich master planning work. Any other cabinet members want to make any remarks? Okay, James?
No question, only to say I think this looks really exciting and quite keen to see it get underway, actually, particularly some of the stuff around the sort of digital hub and helping drive that skills agenda. So yeah, good stuff, thank you.
Thanks, James. Sandra? No?
No, thank you. But no, I think we've discussed you know, my concerns or inputs around the agenda that James has just mentioned before, so I don't think I need to put that again. Thank you.
Okay, so can we go to the recommendations? Again, a delegated authority to award the refurbishment contract. All indicate, please. Thank you very much. So we go on now to item 15, which is the procurement of the postal collection and delivery services, and that's Gail's.
So this is a very short and straightforward report to award contract for postal collection and delivery services. So postage is an area which we know we've previously identified where savings could be made as part of our efficiency and service reviews. You will be aware that we have a policy of using second-class posts in all but the most urgent of circumstances. However, moving forward, the new contract will open up wider opportunities because of the flexibility that pay-as-we-go contracts provide. We expect to be able to make significant savings in this budget through channel shift in this and future financial years. How we communicate with residents is changing, and this will be shaped by our new customer and digital strategy. This means that those residents who are able will interact with us online, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge that some people will not be able to do this and they will need our support. It is interesting that in the past year, our postage volumes have decreased by 31%, and that COVID-19 seems to have increased the number of people who would prefer to be contacted by email. Some of our residents still like to talk to us, and our new phone system with the ringback functions has certainly helped to make this a more efficient process. We're adding more services to customer accounts so that people can access such things as rent balances and parking permits at their own convenience 24 hours a day. So in conclusion, with more and more people wanting the opportunity to go paperless to help the environment, we have the opportunity to continue reducing the council's postage bill, and we'll take every opportunity to do so. So the recommendation is there to award the contract to Royal Mail up to the value of £813,000 for a 3-year contract. So thank you. That's very short and to the point. Nikki's here, so if she wants to add to that.
I don't think I can add to that at all, Gail. That was absolutely perfect and describes the fact that, as we said, it's a pay-as-you-go contract. So although it's 813,000 over 3 years, that won't be how much we'll be spending.
Okay, that's a sort of envelope in which the contract is.
It is, and so as we reduce the postage costs through efficiencies, as Gail has said, then we'll only pay for what we use. We'll always need some post, but as Gail's described, people have changed methods of communications with us, and we have changed our method of communications with some of them.
Okay, thank you. That's very good, very clear. Any cabinet members? Sandra, anything on this? James? Okay, seems eminently sensible and takes account of probably contracting demand for those services. That's a good deal. So can we agree the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. Okay, let's go on to item 16, which is a contract for the roofing upgrades and repairs programme to council dwellings. That's yours, Gail.
Thank you. This report seeks to award a contract for the delivery of roofing upgrades and repairs for the period 1st of June 2021 to 31st of March 2024 to Aspect Group Services Limited. This is valued at £2,271,840.51, and once again shows the significant investment this council makes in its housing stock. This decision will supersede the previous Cabinet contract decision made in February 2020. Even though this contract was for a 3-year period, this was subject to an annual review to make sure that the work was of an adequate standard while still providing best value for money. On review, NPSN and the procurement team consulted with Eastern Procurement Limited to evaluate whether the council was securing best value for money for its roofing upgrade and repairs programme. The evaluation was by means of a mini competition with suppliers on the EPL framework. It was based on a further 3-year contract. EPL advised that this would give any contractor greater continuity of work and more certainty to their workforce. Following the cost and quality evaluation carried out by NPSN and EPL, it's proposed that the contract is awarded as a 1 year plus 1 year plus 1 year term to Aspect Group Services Limited. This is a direct award to the first place supplier. We have worked well with the contractor before, and they are a Norfolk contractor, which is very pleasing. The contract will be reviewed annually to make sure their performance and quality is met. Orders placed will not exceed the approved budgets included within the HRA capital programme for 2021 to 22 and subsequent approved budgets in 2022-23 and 23-24. So back to the recommendation to award the contract to Aspect Group Services Limited. The recommendation is in full on page 257. I know that John Hodson is here and he might want to add something to this, and so might Louise.
No, thank you, Councillor. I think you've covered it all. Thank you.
Louise, do you want to add anything?
Oh, apologies. I thought I'd indicated no. Apologies for that. I was on mute.
And so was I. So my apologies for that. First error. I don't know. Oh, right. Okay. Cabinet colleagues, any questions? Okay. Sandra. Yep.
I do have a question, yes, thank you. My last, you'll be pleased. So again, it is obviously positive that upgrades to roofs are being done and that this includes an element of better insulation, which will improve energy efficiency. However, I want to return to the important concept of looking at the whole house rather than piecemeal improvements from the point of energy efficiency. A whole house retrofit ensures that improvements complement each other rather than working against each other. And it also ensures that key issues such as air quality, damp management, and ventilation are managed appropriately. So I think this again demonstrates the need for a comprehensive retrofitting strategy, which would integrate these roofing upgrades as part of a future whole house retrofit, so there are no unintended consequences such as condensation. Could you confirm that going forward, this is the council's aspiration and that we can expect that the next round of roofing repairs will be part of an integrated strategy for the whole building? So just to clarify, I'm not saying that it all has to be done at once, but that the plan for retrofitting the building exists, so the roofing upgrades are integrated in kind of a comprehensive strategy.
Okay, so the logistics of the way we deal with the refurb and upgrade of our properties, I suppose, is at the heart of this question. Lou, did you want to comment?
Yes, I'm happy to start, and then maybe John, if you've got any points to add, that would be helpful. I think referring back to the conversation that we had while Neil was in Cabinet a few minutes earlier, we're very much aware of the need to look at the holistic approach to retrofitting and decarbonisation of the stock. And there are a number of considerations to take into account in doing that. We need to formulate a plan. We need to do that working in partnership with others. We need to learn from others. We need to source opportunities for funding, and we need to understand our own investment capacity and the condition of our housing. That's going to take a little while for us to pull together. So very much, Councillor, it's at the forefront of our thinking in planning for our kind of next round. It's unlikely to come through in the kind of the next papers that come to Cabinet, but those for the next years, you know, that will be part of our consideration, and you'll see that coming through.
Thanks, Lou. John, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just to confirm really that we do look at it as a holistic approach to all properties when we do the roofing. Although it's very difficult to retrofit a property completely, particularly when you've got a tenant in situ. So we do tend to look at it holistically, undertake piecemeal works, but we do obviously do this with, you know, consideration with tendering and other best value options as well. So we do that, but obviously we have to consider the tenant in situ with some of this major refit works and how it would impact them, particularly if they've got large families in situ as well.
I ask maybe that I can have an example of you know, such a holistic look at a building where you do an upgrade, so I understand where the council is at the moment. Would that be possible, John, please?
We can provide you with we've done some whole home improvements in the past where we have looked at particularly around void properties when they become void, and we do larger scale refurbishment works. Obviously, yeah, we can provide you with that, and Councillor Harris has many ways of that. Yeah,
we can, John, we can look at that, and in collaboration with Louise as well to give an example or two.
Absolutely.
That's the case, Sandra, but it will take a little while to pull together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And James, did you have anything on this? No. Okay. So can we go to the recommendation, please, on page 257? All those in favour, please indicate. Right. Thank you very much. That is the end of our above the line or public items. I need to ask Cabinet if they are happy for the exclusion of the public so that we can go to the exempt items. Could you indicate if you're happy to do that, please? Okay, thank you very much. Now, can I just check? Is there is there a separate, there is.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
we-
there's a red code, which if you could go on to, I'll say about 5 minutes, just while I close this stream down, and then if you go on to the second Zoom code.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the public who have stayed with us through the last hour and 3/4, and see you in a few minutes.